This is Tarolo, guys. As you know, we want to empower Basotho. So today we are going to have a very beautiful presentation. We are talking results-based monitoring and evaluation today. Our presenter today is Ndade Mokete Khobotle. Ndade Khobotle is a consultant who is a specialist in many areas, but today he is going to specialize in monitoring and evaluation. For those of you who do not know Ndade Khobotle has worked in many places, mainly dealing with the area of monitoring and evaluation, but he's also a specialist of dealing with strategy development. He's also a specialist in Anna, what's that difficult word that epidemiology. Yeah, he has also done epidemiology, but he's very experienced. He has done quite a lot of work in this area, so we just thought maybe we should just invite him as one of our external consultants to come and assist us to understand what we mean by results-based monitoring and evaluation. Maybe you may ask what Tarolo has to do with monitoring and evaluation. It is important to remember that we are a consulting company. We deal with various areas. We deal with mainly our area of focus is labor law, human resource management, and related subjects. But we have also picked up that there is no way that you can deal with projects, you can deal with even just the work that an organization does without having a monitoring and evaluation aspect of the project. So we thought it is high time that we make people aware that let's not just do projects, let's not just do work without putting in place some monitoring and evaluation, a system of monitoring and evaluation in our work, so that we are able to see whether we're making any impact and how that impact is being made. For now, I would like to welcome Ndade Khobotle. Welcome very much, Ndade, and thank you very much for taking this time to come and help us present this very important subject to our members, to our listeners, to our viewers. I think without much further ado, let me just go ahead and share your screens.
Thank you very much, Mesabani. I really appreciate this opportunity to share with my colleagues and my friends and participants the result-based monitoring and evaluation. I would like to say again, welcome everyone for joining this. I'm already excited. This is a very interesting subject to me, and I consider it as a very, very important subject that we have to know, and not only know about it, but to implement it effectively and efficiently. This is the backbone of the interventions. Let's go to the slide. The objective of this webinar and the presentation is basically to equip participants. I know that we don't have much time, but at least you'll have some kind of a knowledge and understanding of the fundamental M&E principles, and some of you who are already working on that, you will be able to implement it, and there might be other aspects that you may be not aware of how to integrate it within the monitoring and evaluation. Our presentation it's actually structured as follows. We will talk about the concept of monitoring and evaluation. Then we will talk about the result-based monitoring and evaluation, starting from the result-based and how you link the monitoring and evaluation from the concept of the result-based. And maybe we should start by defining the monitoring and evaluation system. which is basically a set of planning, information gathering, and synthesis to reflect and reporting processes along with necessary conditions. We will actually go in details as to what this M&E system means. It refers to all indicators, tools, processes you will use. And we have the monitoring part and we have the evaluation part. Let me remind you that the monitoring is a continuous process of collecting and analyzing information about the program or intervention. And there are a lot of questions that we answer with the monitoring. What are we doing? This is done by tracking inputs and outputs. So that is the monitoring. Continuously, we track the performance. Basically, we reflect the performance at the level of an output. Later on, we will be able to see how the hierarchy of the results, so that when you talk about the output, you understand what exactly is the output and what is the outcome and impact. The evaluation, on the other hand, is more about a systematic assessment. We are doing a rigorous, scientifically based collection of interventions and try to apply statistical analysis. The evaluation has got a lot of elements that are applied in conducting research. The only difference between evaluation and research is that evaluation, you generate a hypothesis based on the intervention. The question is that, is this intervention having an influence on an expected outcome? That is the evaluation. But the research is not based on intervention. You just ask a similar question, but that question is not related to the intervention. Evaluation and research are almost the same, but the only difference is that evaluation is more focusing on the intervention, while research is just a general question. The other thing is that we have quite a number or different types of evaluation. We have process evaluation, which focuses on how program is being implemented. I'm telling you, participants, colleagues, friends, process evaluation is very important, because you do the process evaluation, it will tell you whether you are implementing the project or the intervention as per the design, or whether you are implementing the intervention as per the plan that you have done. It even reflects the attitude and the perception of the affected population, so that you can be able to rework on your program. That is the process evaluation. We have outcome evaluation, which is basically the effectiveness. We will be able to tell the difference between an outcome and an output, and you will be able to see what we mean when you are assessing the outcome. You are evaluating the outcome. You are actually asking, is this intervention being able to bring the desired outcome? Then that is the question that you are answering. There is another issue of availability. Availability is an assessment that we are doing to be able to say, is this project designed in the way that it will allow me to evaluate it? So the availability of the program or the intervention is very important. It's very important because it tells you whether the design is the one that can allow you to be able to ask questions that, is what I'm doing really bringing the desired results? We have an impact evaluation. Believe me, this is very interesting. The impact evaluation is different from the evaluation of before and after. The evaluation of before and after has got a lot of biases, and drawing conclusions from the evaluation, a simple evaluation, we have actually realized that it's not enough. The impact evaluation is what is referred to as a gold standard, because it uses what we call a counterfactual. That means it mimics the area that we are intervening in with another area where we are not, and we are comparing. There are a lot of variables that we are using to compare where we are and where we are not. We are trying as much as possible to make these places or this area similar. We have been involved in a lot of impact evaluation, in social protection, in health programs, even in water and sanitation programs. Here in Lesotho, we have worked on a number of social protection, and there are other methodologies that are very common. The randomized control trial is a very popular one. Then we have the recreation discontinuity. In the COVID, we used to have number needed to treat, or what you call matching. We match participants and try to see whether those ones that have been exposed to the intervention are different from the ones that are not exposed, but they have to be similar. So this is the one that I'm telling you, if you adopt this impact evaluation, you will be very attractive to the donors. And believe me, monitoring and evaluation is not only assessing and trying to track our performance, but also you can use it to mobilize resources for your intervention. These are the benefits of monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring and evaluation has got a lot of benefits, and you can actually see them. M&E Systems provides essential data for monitoring the program and improve the response. Because believe me, monitoring and evaluation, it doesn't have the value on itself. It only has the value if you are able to use that information in decision making. Specifically, monitoring and evaluation, it guides the planning, coordination, and implementation, assess the effectiveness of the program, ensure accountability to those affected by the intervention, the extent at which the project is on track, because once the project is not on track, the monitoring will actually be able to tell you. We have tools like indicator performance taking tool, where you will be actually performing, assessing the progress of the intervention, looking at the performance on the indicators. And we will be having the targets on each and every period. Then you can track whether you are on track, or you are behind, or you have actually exceeded the expectation. The evaluation, on the other hand, the extent at which the intervention are having or have had the desired impact. The impact is the long-term effect. This is the kind of a monitoring and evaluation framework that, if you have this framework, it's nice because it's in a bit of a graphic presentation. And once you grab this graphic presentation, it has almost all issues, critical issues that you have to consider. First of all, you have the strategic and the program goals and objectives. Then you develop the indicators. From the indicators, you do the data sources. Where are you getting the data for the indicator? Then you have a rigorous evaluation, impact evaluation and research. You can even conduct research. Then we have the knowledge management, that you gather the experiences and the lessons learned. The knowledge management is more of documenting and collecting lessons learned and the experiences that the organization has actually encountered. The database is more of the storage of the data, and the data as raw as it is, you store it, but the database system should have the ability to analyze and produce the report as per the needs of the stakeholders. Then you do the information products, then you do the data dissemination and use. That's a very critical part. Data dissemination and use, you have to have a plan to disseminate your data, and you have to have a plan to promote the use of data. But at the heart of this, we have what we call the necessary conditions. The M&E capacity building. You need to have people with skills to analyze, to collect data, to understand the monitoring and evaluation, to be able to understand even the design of the strategic design, program design, because these are the people who will actually tell you whether the goals are smart or not. Are they specific? Are they measurable? Are they attainable? So these people should have that particular knowledge. But believe me, all the time, you have to do data auditing. Data auditing is completely different from financial auditing. Data auditing, you verify the quality of the data. Is the data of integrity, the precision of the data, the completeness of the data? These are the things that you have to put in place. Okay, this is the framework in a graphic presentation, but I can continue and show you. We have what we call 12 components of a functional monitoring and evaluation system. Having a monitoring and evaluation system is not enough, but you have to make sure that your monitoring and evaluation system has these 12 components. And these 12 components are at a desired level and standards. The first component is organizational structure within the M&E. One of the things that we can do, if you are a large organization, you can have an M&E unit with personnel, with some kind of a certain level of management, because you need somebody with a bit of an authority to be able to make a decision on the M&E. If you are a smaller organization, you may not need to have a unit. You can have a monitoring and evaluation officer or a monitoring and evaluation expert. But there are other organizations that are very small, and sometimes they don't even have the resources to pay an individual who would be a monitoring and evaluation specialist. You can identify individuals that have the potential to gain the skills that are required to have a monitoring and evaluation. And this individual, even if he's a program officer, you can actually, within the job description, you can actually have some of the functions of monitoring and evaluation. It depends on the size, the organizational structure of the M&E. It depends on the size of the organization you have. Human capacity is very important. You have to have people with the skills to be able to analyze the data, to be able to interpret, to be able to report. A lot of people should understand the program design. You will see when we continue why we need to understand the program design. M&E partnership. So there is another component of the M&E system that you need to make sure that it's functional, is the M&E partnership. The M&E partnership involves all the stakeholders, all the key stakeholders in M&E. We do have programs that are cutting across, and we partner with a lot of organizations. The M&E partnership is a very important one, because you don't have the mandate to conduct certain data sources. And there are other colleagues and other organizations that are responsible to conduct those data sources. You have to establish partnership. For those organizations that are coordinating a number of institutions, the best thing in terms of implementing a program or a strategy, the best thing is to establish a coordination mechanism. Once you have a coordination mechanism, it has got clear terms of reference for the members. They know what is expected from them. You do collaborative efforts in terms of doing some of the M&E activities. That one, it cuts duplication of work, and we do M&E in a most cost-effective manner. Colleagues strive for this. This is one big area that is going to help us to achieve what we want. Even when you are disseminating the data, look at those ones that are more influential. There are those organizations that are more influential when it comes to the public, when it comes to the decision makers. Try to piggyback on the activities if they are doing the dissemination and insert your report, and this is something that can actually make you very, very, very effective. The other component is the M&E plan. M&E plan, it outlines all M&E activities. Basically, it talks about all these M&E components, and that one is followed by the costed M&E. Originally, it was actually agreed that 5%, but we realized that 5% is not enough. Some people, they say 10%, but we are saying the cost of the M&E plan, it shouldn't be less than 10% of the total cost of the project. Even when you are designing a project, after you have completed costing the project, then you have to cost the M&E. Do this at the beginning of the program, because when you design a program or an intervention, the M&E, it starts there. We will see it when we go on how. M&E advocacy and communication. M&E advocacy and communication, you are targeting at the decision makers, you advocate. Advocacy is basically communication to influence the decision. The other component is routine monitoring. The monitoring that you are going to, the data that you are collecting routinely, you have to have a system that is going to do that. Surveys, you have to do surveys. Either you do them collaboratively. We do have the measure surveys here, and I'm expecting that our organizations, they should take part. We have continuous multi-purpose survey that is being led by Bureau of Statistics. We have household budget survey. We have demographic health survey that is led by the Ministry of Health. We do have another measure survey, which is multiple indicator cluster survey. There are other surveys that are depending on secondary data, the deprivation, multiple deprivation assessment, where we are actually saying poverty is not only about the monetary poverty, but the deprivation. There are people who are deprived of the services, and we consider them as people who are poor. The other one is the database. Database, you have to have a database. Believe me, electronic database is efficient and effective, and we encourage people that do electronic database, and even your collection of data, use the mobile data. It saves time, and you actually, the security of your data, you can actually improve on that. But have a backup, a paper base. The paper base, if people are inertia, they don't want to change, watch out, people might actually stick to the paper base. If you decide to go electronic, make sure that the paper-based can only be used when you have emergencies. Make sure that your database is integrated or harmonized with the database of the government or other institutions that you are sharing the data. Because when you do the analysis, you depend on data from other institutions. Data harmonization. Then we have the supportive supervision. When you want to ensure supportive supervision and data auditing, is more about you making sure that people, they get the capacity. It's more about capacity building. It's more about capacity building. It's more about trying to ensure that the data that you collect and analyze is valid. Believe me, if you happen to analyze and present the report that is being informed by data of poor quality, which is not complete, which is not of integrity, you can imagine what kind of a decision you are likely to influence. Then we do have another component, which is evaluation and research. We have talked about the evaluation, we have talked about the research. Try as much as possible to have evaluation and research strategy. Try to have an evaluation and research agenda. These are the two documents that will guide you. These are the two documents that will guide you in terms of taking and implementing evaluation and research. So these are the 12 components, colleagues, that you have to have for you and for your M&E to be functional. And the functionality of the M&E is to collect the data using very skilled people. Organizational structure is the commitment. And advocacy, you have leaders. We can even assess whether leaders are committed. Let me show you. Before you start to develop the M&E system, there's one thing that we have to do. These are the two slides up is just the explanation of the 12 components of which I've already talked about. Let me go to the why are we doing the M&E assessment. Before you develop an M&E system, you have to do the M&E assessment. The reason why I presented the 12 components, these are the components that you have to assess. You have to assess these components and say, as an institution, as an organization, where am I? These are the components. The assessment is the one that will inform you to have a monitoring and evaluation work plan, because you know, for you to strengthen your M&E system, what are the areas that you are going to do and where are you going to allocate resources. So the M&E assessment is a very important tool. First of all, before you do any M&E, before you design it, assess the M&E. Some of the organizations, they don't have, but those components you might find out they are there. You might actually find the organization doesn't have an M&E plan, or it doesn't have an M&E framework, but they have a database, a very useful database, because it's the requirement of the donor or the requirement of the manager. But a comprehensive M&E framework might not be there. So when you do the assessment, you are able to identify the organization's strengths and weaknesses. That means when you design a work plan, you maintain the strengths and you try to build on the weaknesses that we have identified during the assessment. Colleagues, this is the tool. I just picked one. This is the tool that we are using. This one is specifically for organizational structure. You will have a similar tool for capacity building, human resource capacity build skills. You will have a similar tool for M&E partnership, but the questions will be different. Like, how are you doing in terms of partnership? There are those ones that are doing partially. There are those ones that are not doing it at all. There are those ones that are doing it effectively. So this will actually reflect to what extent are you going to do your M&E. So colleagues, enough of the M&E. This is just an introduction of the M&E. Let's go to the result-based conversation and key drivers of the result-based. You will be able to see why we need to start from the result-based management conversation before we even talk about some of the elements of the M&E. This one was just an introduction to show you how M&E looks like. But before you can even think of M&E, the first thing, the starting point is this one. Understand the current drivers of the RBM, understand the principles of the result-based management. So, this is the explanation of the result-based management strategy that focuses on performance and achievement of outputs. We have a lot of explanation, but in short, result-based planning plus implementation plus M&E plus program adjustment is the result-based management. So the result-based management has got all these 4 components. And if you do those 4 components very well, the result-based planning, you don't just plan because you are thinking ahead, you are being led by the results. Implementation, you are not implementing anything else but what you have actually planned. you monitor and evaluate your implementation, you do the program adjustments, because the monitoring and evaluation will inform you about areas that need to be corrected. Result-based management, in short, is that. So, colleagues, let's continue. This is just the definition of the result-based management, which is not very different from what we are going to do. But one thing that I want to highlight is the result chain, which is the logic model that we are going to see. A result framework, which is something that we are going to talk about as well. There's another one which is performance-based funding. Take note of this. Most of the donors, they are moving towards performance-based funding. You are not going to get the funding unless you reflect that you have actually performed. So one other thing that we need to be careful is try as much as possible to set your targets to be realistic. Make sure that when you set the targets, they are realistic, because those targets, the funding will depend on whether you have reached the target or not. Some of the targets, you may actually find out that you really work hard. Look at the terrain of Lesotho. To reach, say, maybe 1,000 people in the rural areas with education material, I'm just making an example, it will require you to travel a lot and a long distance. And if you don't understand the nature of the intervention, your targets will be not realistic. And believe me, it will affect the funding that comes to you. This performance-based funding is being promoted by the Bretton Woods institutions, and you know when I talk about the Bretton Woods institutions, which ones? World Bank, IMF. The EU has already encroached into this. They are trying to bring everybody, because the Bretton Woods institutions, every donor wants to align themselves with the Bretton Woods. So performance-based funding is coming, colleagues, and we have to learn more about that. Invite me so that we can discuss the performance-based management. Invite Arullo, it will actually facilitate that. We have the result-based management cycles, context and situation analysis, strategic prioritization and planning, implementation, monitoring and evaluation, learning and adjustment. They contribute to a conversation, result-based conversation, when we are saying, let's see how we have performed. And because this cycle, it will actually let us, the conversation will be good. Quality of analysis. Our analytical work will be of the desired quality, strategic prioritization. This cycle, if you do it very well, you'll be able to prioritize. Believe me, we don't have the luxury of having abundant resources. We are having limited resources. In economics, they say maximization subject to the constraints. That means you choose those interventions that will actually give you the highest or the largest impact with the little cost that you have. Plausibility of delivery results, we are saying these results are able to be delivered and we can demonstrate. This monitoring, this result-based management cycle, it actually enables us to do all these other things. Let me talk about the drivers, the key drivers of result-based management. The funding donors, they want you to say, yes, I am doing the result-based management. The donors, they want that. Reporting on results and transparency. You want to report on results and transparency. Humanitarian imperatives. Believe me, when we discuss this, you will see how you are looking at your intervention through the humanitarian lens, and you learn that, how you do that. National Strategic Development Plan, we have to make sure it requires us to do this. The equity focus, equity and equality, they are two different concepts. Equality means you are giving everybody equal share. Equity, it means you are giving everybody equal opportunity. So the equity is more about giving equal opportunity. Equality means giving equal service or equal products. National development priorities, we know that we do have SDGs and other global imperatives, international and regional commitments that we make as a country. These are the drivers. Let's talk about the project and program design. For you to be able to design a very effective and useful monitoring and evaluation, you really have to understand the project and the program and the project design. This is very important. The project and the program design, including the strategy, you do, first of all, you have to do the problem identification and do the causal analysis. You as an M&E person, you really have to understand this, because when you do the monitoring and evaluation, you will be able to tell whether the organization is being able to address the problem that they have actually indicated. So you identify a problem deprivation, undertake a causal analysis using the whys. And we will be able to see how we do that quickly. Let's continue. Problem analysis, a good understanding of the context, clear problem identification and trend analysis, to be able to say this is a persistent problem. It's not an episode, it's a problem. Because something, if it's an episode, believe me, is something that comes and goes. But this one, if we establish a trend, this is something that has consistently been there, we need to understand that. Sound problem analysis, appreciation of organizational comparative advantage and value proposition. This is the problem analysis. So it's the foundation for a solid program design. Will facilitate the realization and achievement of the results. Because if you don't have a problem analysis, you are actually going to ride on a dead horse. That means you are not going anywhere. So you are not even solving the problem. This slide is just a detailed slide which says what are you doing. And we will go even into the prioritization, the last column, row, which says you need to analyze the problem and you have to have objective analysis, which is the flip side of the problem tree. We'll look at that. But then you do the strategic analysis where you're doing the prioritization. There are things that are in focus. Mark my word, there are things that are in focus for the organization. That means there are those things that the organization is mandated to do. If things are in focus, you have to have an investment. You design intervention and you invest in those. There are those things that are in scope that are causing as part of the problem, but they are not in focus. That means you're not mandated to do those. What you do advocacy and you monitor those because they are not in focus. For the effectiveness of your intervention, invest on things that are in focus. Things that are in scope, you can actually try as much as possible to advocate. That is where the partnership, it works. Communicating with the leaders, having the champions. Those are the kind of work that you do, but you don't do heavy investment on things that are in scope. Things that are out of scope, believe me, just watch them. Otherwise, you invest into those things, it's a waste of time and resources. So let's continue. Then I have these two trees. These two trees, they are two trees they are very similar, and the other one is a tree of negative statements, the other one is a tree of positive statements. When you are developing an intervention, you have to have these two trees. Here is an example of a tree which has the roots and the what, but this is a national identity and civil registration kind of a tree that we were doing with my colleagues. This tree, we were just making an example, and some of these things, if we didn't deliberate much, but we are saying what is the problem. The problem is absence of NICR. And what are the root causes? The lower part, it's talk about the root causes. The upper part of the middle, which is the stem, are the leaves, which represent what we call the effect of the problem. So the cause and effect is start from here. What causes this problem? What are the effects of this problem? And then when you go to the flip side of it, you make positive statements that are actually addressing the root causes and trying to change the stem, which is the absence of the NICR, improved access to NICR, then lack of access to quality of health, lack of access to social services, deprivation of human rights. You flip it on this side, you are trying to do the objective tree. Poverty, poor health, and then on this side you have increased access to social, and these are the objectives that you want, and they come straight from the problem tree. The importance of the problem tree, it helps you to design your intervention. Let's continue. Okay, let me say, when you are doing the problem analysis, don't forget to apply the lenses. Very important, my dear. The lenses, they are saying, what is the duty bearers? What are the right holders? There are those ones that are the right holders. There are those ones that are the duty bearers. Let's take an example of a child and a parent. A child will be a right holder. He has got the right to education, right to life, right to happiness. The duty bearers is the one that has to facilitate that the right holder is being able to access her right, or to have access to rights or experience their rights. So when you are doing the problem analysis, you have to know who are the duty bearers, who are the right holders. You are applying the lens. When you are doing the problem analysis, issues of gender, we know that the problem sometimes can be different between sex, between male and female. Sometimes you have to apply the equity lens. Equity lens, people who are poor, sometimes the problem is more heavy on people who are poor, more heavy on vulnerable children, sometimes more poor on people living in rural areas. So those are the kind of things that you have more prevalent in a certain age group. So when you are doing the problem analysis, for you to be able to inform the M&E design, you need to apply these lenses. And that's why we are saying, M&E people, be on standby, be involved. Ask questions like this. Have you applied the lenses? I don't see the problem being prevalent in a certain group, or is it a general problem? So these are the kind of questions that the M&E people need to ask when we are designing the intervention at the beginning of problem analysis. There's another one which is 10 determinants, which are the root causes. They are actually grouped into 4 categories. Some of the root causes of a problem are associated with the social norms, a widely followed social rule of behavior within a community. Legislation and policies. The absence of legislation or an outdated legislation or policy could be the root cause. Budget and expenditure. We don't have enough money. The disbursement is the problem. This management and coordination. A lot of problems here in Lesotho. The root cause is within management and coordination. Availability of essential commodities and input that is the supply side, access to adequate staffed services. You find out that, especially, I'm not even talking about health here, but those ones that are providing services in the rural areas, no one wants to go into the rural areas. And you find people who are not really staffed. Sometimes they are not many. Sometimes, but via open from time to time, the facility or the place where we are offering the service, people are not there. Sometimes these people, they don't have information. So this is one of the things that when you are assessing the root causes, you should be able to see where they fall. The demand side, financial access. People sometimes they travel a lot, they don't have money to go and access the service. And then once you understand the root cause, you'll be able to design your intervention. Social and cultural practices and beliefs. These are some of the things that, believe me, it's very difficult to change this. Timing and continuity of use. There are a lot of projects that have been designed and they had a problem of being continuity of use. You have to actually address those things. Quality of care. These are some of the root causes. When you are looking at the problem, you should take into consideration. Colleagues, we are talking about the causal analysis. The causal analysis is based on why, because, if, then theory. This is what we call the theory of change. Why, because, if, then theory. Key deprivation, that is the first block on your left, on the left hand side. Key deprivation and trends. Why do we have this particular problem? Because then you come up with the immediate causes. And we say why? Up until you come up with the underlying causes and you come up with the root causes. And the root causes will be those 10 determinants. Those are the root causes. And this is a why because kind of analysis. You are asking questions, why this persist? Then the why because is informed by evidence. You need to have evidence to be able to say, yes, this problem exists because of this. There has to be evidence. In evidence gathering, we have the published evidence in the form of reports, studies, research, whatever. But be mindful of what we call a gray literature. Gray literature, it has a lot of information, but it didn't see its way through publication. So consider the gray literature. Do consider that. So we do have activities on the other side, which is what we call if then. If we carry these activities, then the outputs are going to come out because outputs are the results of our actions. If we produce these outputs, a certain expected behavior is going to prevail. That means this is what we call an outcome. If we have this kind of behavior prevailing, then we are going to experience the long-term impacts, which is a different scenario from the deprivation that we have identified when we are going through the why because. The if then is actually the theory of change. If then, why because, if then theory of change. That's how we build our program.
Before we continue, I just wanted to make participants aware that they can use the chat to pose questions if they have any questions. But we have also made it possible that it has agreed to share the slides after the presentation. So you will have access to the slides. But if you have questions now that you'd like him to address, please feel free to put the questions up on the chat. But you can also raise your hand. I have seen that people raise hands here, but we have been ignoring them. We just wanted him to go through the presentation. But of course, the slides will be shared. And obviously, this is now the beginning, just the start of the conversations on monitoring and evaluation. We are going to have further interactions on this topic. So feel free to start asking questions and getting others involved in the conversation. Okay, Dr. You can continue.
Thank you. So, colleagues, friends, there's another thing that once you have done the why, because, and if then, you might actually find out that the structural causes, underlying causes, immediate causes, you might actually quite have a number of them. Even on the activities, you might find out that you have quite a number of activities that you need to do to be able to come up with a certain output, or you may have a number of outputs and outcomes. So the chain is not, it doesn't seem as simple as it is. This simplicity is basically for presentation purposes. But in reality, you would find out that each and every layer has got a number of those. Now, there comes the time when you do the prioritization. You see that funnel? That funnel is the one that an organization, we know you cannot address each and every deprivation. You cannot do everything. We are limited in terms of scope, in terms of time, in terms of resources. Believe me. What I'm saying is that once you have done the why, because, and if then, each and every layer will have a number of issues. So you have, it's actually building a maze of issues so that you might actually find it very difficult which one you have to do. You have limited funds, which one you have to do. You have limited capacity and skills. Limited in the sense that there are those areas that you can't do anything because you don't have skills. Believe me, we are not living in a situation where everybody has got luxury. People who have money, they do everything. We don't have money. We need to prioritize. So we have about 5 filters that we have actually identified. There might be even more than that. The mandate, the criticality of national challenge. Is this really a problem? Is this in line with the global and sectoral priorities, what you're doing? Is it something that is in line with the strategic plan? Is this what you are doing? Are you in a better position to act on this, or is this something that somebody can do it better? Because if somebody can do it better, choose something else. Capacity and resources. Do you have human resource? Do you have financial resources? Do you have knowledge? Do you have the technical know-how to be able, the technology, to be able to address this? That's how you choose your priorities. These are some of the filters that you use after you've done the why, because, and if then theory of change. And this one will refine you, and you will be focused on what you are going to do because it meets all these criteria. And we do have something like, what is happening? Okay, we do have prioritization mapping tool. If you can see, I've highlighted problem 3, which means the problem number 3 is the one that meets all the criteria, and you can choose that one, as opposed to the other ones that are not meeting the criteria. So you are doing this mapping from the funnel. Then you do this mapping to be able to choose which one you are able to do. And you really have to do this mapping to be able to say what. Most of the time you find out that we are doing things that we don't even have the resources, we don't have the capacity. It's not even within our mandate. It's not something that is aligned to the priorities of the sectors that we are doing. And most of these things, they are influenced by the donors. The donors, when they want, I don't know nowadays, but we tried as much as possible to say, listen, the donors should try as much as possible to fund the national priorities. So let's continue because we are left with
Formulation of an intervention.
Formulation of an intervention. After you have done this, now you formulate the intervention. Let's pass this one. Okay, before we pass this one, when you see this, we have the objective tree that we have actually designed when we're flipping the problem tree. The objective tree is the one that we are drawing what we call the logical framework, the popular logical framework that most of the people they know, at least people who have dealt with programs. Then the logical framework is something that looks like this. We have goals, objectives, outputs, activities, and that is the first column. Leave alone the ones that are outside the table. Then you describe objectively verifiable indicators of achievements, sources of means of verification, assumptions, and risk. Logical framework, this is a typical logical framework. This is where the M&E is also here, because objectives should be measurable, should be specific. Don't come up with an objective that is not specific, because it will be difficult to measure. Don't come up with an objective that is not measurable, because really, how are you going? Time bound. An objective is supposed to be time bound. So the indicator. The assumptions and risk. Assumptions are conditions that must exist for you to achieve the results. You have to state those assumptions, and from time to time you have to assess these assumptions whether the conditions they still hold or not. Because if the conditions are not holding anymore, then you have to do something. There are the other ones which are the risk. We are going to talk about the risk profiling, highlight it a bit. If you want to get in details about doing the risk profiling and managing the risk, Taholo is just around the corner. They can actually help you and work together with you to come up with that. The risk are those things, those negative things that will actually undermine your efforts. And you have to know, let me tell you, COVID, it caught us with the pens down because we didn't include it in our risk profiling. It caught us with pens down. That's why when it came, we were supposed to go home and not work. And we were supposed to do our mandate of delivering the services, and people were dying on this side, people were hungry. Believe me, it was the house on fire, and we didn't have any extinguisher. Colleagues, our analysis of the risk is very important. Risk analysis is very important. So basically our logical framework, it looks like this hammer, where you start with the inputs, processes, activities, outputs, outcomes, and ultimately impact. And this logical chain is a result chain. It has to be informed by evidence that if you do this activity, it will give you this output. If you produce this output, this is the kind of behavior that you're going to change. If you change this behavior, this is the long-term impact that you are going to realize, and this long-term impact is very much linked to our deprivation. Let's continue. Risk assessment. We do the risk management. This is the risk management table, where you see the first quadrant is actually high impact and likelihood, high likelihood. If something is likely to happen and has got a high impact, it needs to be addressed. If something has got a low impact and is high in terms of likelihood, you need to consider that one. I'm not saying leave it, but I'm saying consider and try to see how you can do it. Don't put much of the resources, because really, even if it happens, sometimes it may not actually have an impact on your intervention. There are those ones that have low likelihood and high impact. Be careful of those ones. They have low likelihood but high impact. If it happens, it might actually shut you down, but it's not likely to happen. There are those ones which are not likely to happen, and they are not going to have an impact at all if ever they happen. Forget about those ones. This is how you do your risk profiling. And when you are designing your intervention, you need to consider your mitigation measures for those ones that you believe they are likely to happen and have high impact, and those ones that are having high impact even though they are not likely to happen. You have to have the mitigation measures. Let's continue. And then these are assumptions and risks. We can pass this one. Don't worry about it. This is what program intervention is all about. Program intervention, you are doing program 1, 2, 3, 4, but what you are doing, your activities are basically on this, the 10 determinants that we have actually identified. But remember, you do have strategies, communication for development. Some of these interventions you can do through communication. Some of these interventions you can do through capacity building. Some of these interventions you can do them through innovation. Some of these interventions you can carry them through partnership. So what we are saying is that, look, these are the strategies that you have to adopt. Evidence generation. Adopt these strategies to be able to do your intervention. So strategies are very important to be able to know how am I going to carry out this intervention. If I'm going to address the social norm, am I going to do the communication? Am I going to do the capacity building? Don't do capacity building in areas where you need to do communication. So the monitoring and evaluation, you look into these things as well and say your intervention, it doesn't really address the root cause, which is the 10 determinants that you have designed or you have identified. Okay, now let's talk about the real M&E. The real M&E, having looked at all those components, we have to have an M&E framework, which will have indicator level. Look at the columns. Indicator level, description, baseline, targets for the intervention, the period you are intervening, data sources, frequency. The frequency of the data source, it helps you when you are doing the monitoring and evaluation work plan. Responsibility, who is responsible for? At the impact level, not everybody is responsible. At the outcome level, a few are responsible. At the output level, everyone is responsible. Sometimes we are monitoring the processes, how far the process, and believe me, the targets for the process is the time to complete the process. And you look at the stages and say how far you are. I remember at one time I was actually supposed to design or assess the progress that was made in a building. And this building was having 2 pillars. And I was like, man, 2 pillars. This building, you are not going to finish it. No, when it's like this, it's complete. That means when you develop the indicators, you really have to involve the subject experts because they are the ones who know. Otherwise, your indicators will be meaningless and they will be floating on the air. One other thing is that your indicators, you have to describe them so that when somebody who has not been involved comes across this indicator, for example, when you measure poverty, poverty is measured in many ways, like the level of deprivation. Some people, they use level multiple deprivation to measure poverty. Some people, they use income, like if you consume $1 or per day, you are poor. Those are a lot of institutions, they use different measurements. So when you explain, it's called indicator reference sheet. That means you have to explain the indicators. What does it mean? What are the numerators if they are in percentages? What are the denominators? And for each and every one, some of the denominators, you'd find out they are calculated using estimates. Some are calculated using the registry or the monitoring form. You really have to tell us, because some indicators are very, very difficult to get the denominator for such. Very difficult. Then you have to rely on estimates that are provided by BOS or even the Ministry of Health, those who are doing the national surveys. Let's continue. Okay. One other thing that you have to be very, very concerned about it is what you call a data flow, the journey the data takes. Take note of the journey the data takes because it will help you to address the quality of the data. Where does it come from? Does it come from the enumerators if it's a survey? Does it come from the field staff if it's a program? Does it come weekly? Does it come monthly? You have to know the data, the journey that the data takes to come to the central office. It has to be known and mapped so that when you do the auditing, you know which steps you are going to follow. Let's go down. The last one. This one is a typical structure of a costed M&E plan. You will have all these 12 components being assessed, and you will see your weaknesses and areas that you have to do. You have human resources, HR training program, staff motivation program. Staff motivation is considered as human development. Staff motivation, most of the organizations, they consider as that. Organizational structure, we are going to establish a unit, but if you already have the unit, sometimes you can actually say, I'm going to expand the unit. If your unit doesn't have a research officer, you're going to have a research officer. This is what you can do if you are, it depends where you are. Some of the people, they may actually assign somebody and say, you are a focal person for the M&E. Partnership, identify, develop the coordination framework, how you are going to work with your partner. Establish the M&E technical working group. Then you have to maintain it. Maintenance of the M&E technical working group. Once they have the functions, they have the responsibility, keep on having routine work, routine meetings to reflect the performance of your collective M&E. This is how you can do it. M&E advocacy and communication, this is something that we do it seeking the support of the leaders. Surveys and surveillances. Surveillances is a very interesting, but I think people are doing away with that. But surveillances, they have both techniques of the survey and techniques of the routine. You select certain sites and you take a sample from the sites and you routinely collect from those. The continuous multi-purpose survey that is being implemented by Bureau of Statistics has got characteristics of the surveillance because they select certain households and they follow those certain households with different modules throughout the year. Then next year they will do the resampling again. Database, how you store your data. Your database should have certain characteristics. Build the capacity of your staff to be able to manage the data. As the data comes, you have to capture it, assess it, produce reports, research and evaluation. What you are doing, does it really work? Or are there other things that work better? You do research on that one and evaluation. What we are doing, is it something that brings the desired change? Data analysis, information dissemination and use. This is something that you have to plan. You have to have a schedule. When am I going to do the information dissemination? I'm going to do data analysis and followed by information dissemination. People should know how you are performing, especially the stakeholders, people who are making the decision. They have to know, disseminate, and facilitate. Believe me, the good quality data, people will have to have confidence in your data to be able to use it in their decision making. Colleagues, this is what we have. This is very small. We can even try to see whether we will do the impact evaluation. It's a topic on its own, impact evaluation. Very fascinating. And if you are running programs and intervention, impact evaluation should be something that you carry forward. That one is your ticket to the donors. It's your ticket. And if we can do that one, After this one, we have done it. Believe me, you'll be home and dry, and your M&E will fly so high that no one will touch it. Thank you very much. I think we will see whether there are those things that may be addressed or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Ndade Kgobotle. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a very interesting presentation. I chose not to stop him because I saw that he had a number of slides which he wanted to present to you. But like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to follow us on our Facebook pages and on the LinkedIn page, and then you can make suggestions. You can ask questions. You can add on to what he has said. But we intend for these conversations to be ongoing, so that for people who are really specialists in M&E or who have responsibilities of M&E in their institutions, in their organizations, then we can have these conversations together with them, assist them, and provide development training if it is necessary, and even any other assistance. We are a consulting company, and therefore we would like to ensure that all areas of consulting we cover, we work together, we bring in experts, because we are not the experts, but we bring in experts to present what they know and what they can assist you with. So feel free to talk to us, and also make suggestions of what other areas you would like us to help you with. Then we can put something together. For now, I would like to thank you all for taking time to attend this webinar. Like I said, we're going to have many of these. So look out on our Facebook pages, look out on our WhatsApp statuses when we advertise for the next webinar that we're going to have. Thank you very much for attending. Please leave your email addresses, even on the Facebook page, or even on our WhatsApp numbers or emails, for those who know our emails, if you want to have these slides shared with you. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you, Ndade Kgobotle.
Thank you very much.
This has been interesting. This has been eye-opening. I was actually thinking, okay, then something is wrong with us because we don't have an M&E plan, but we actually say says we need to have an M&E plan. It's not something that is only for other institutions. It's for everyone.
For everyone.
Yeah.
For everyone.
Okay. Thank you very much.